What's up guys, it's Will back again, and today's review is Ghostbusters. The first trailer came out for this movie like 4 months or so ago, and it is the most disliked movie trailer on YouTube of all time, with almost 1 million dislikes. So in other words, the internet has already decided that they hated this movie and everything about it based on the trailer. But anyway, let's get into my review of Ghostbusters so I can tell you whether the internet was right or not. Okay, so Ghostbusters is a supernatural comedy film that's a reboot of the original Ghostbusters movie franchise that began back in 1984 with Ghostbusters and ended in 1989 with Ghostbusters 2. In this new Ghostbusters film directed by Paul Feig, we follow 4 parapsychologists who all have an interest in ghosts and ultimately make a career out of catching them, just like in the original 1984 film. So it's important to note that while this film also takes place in New York City like the original, the two films do not take place in the same universe. There is no mention of the OG Ghostbusters because as far as this movie goes, they don't exist. But the basic plot of this film is that someone is going around New York City and placing devices that amplify paranormal activity in an attempt to break the barrier between the afterlife and the real world. This villain is doing so to cleanse Earth of humans who he believes are a lost cause, and he would rather inhabit the world with ghosts. So yeah, there's your plot. As for the 4 Ghostbusters, 3 of them already knew each other for a decent chunk of the film, and the 4th, Leslie Jones' character Patty, joins the group sort of like Ernie Hudson did back in the original. Melissa McCarthy's character Abby, Kate McKinnon's character Jillian, and Kristen Wiig's character Aaron all decide to investigate the paranormal in a building in New York City after various career failures and just because they all have an interest in the paranormal. They're labeled the Ghostbusters by the media after catching a few ghosts, and they're just like, that name that I've never heard before sounds pretty cool, let's just stick with that. The rest of the movie is spent trying to stop this villain and the ghosts from breaking through the barrier into the real world. Okay internet, I gotta say, your worst dreams, or maybe your best dreams, who knows, have come true. It's bad. So here's the thing, I watched those same trailers you guys watch, and while I didn't love them, I didn't hate them nearly as bad as most of you did. Don't get me wrong though, I thought they made the movie look like shit, but I didn't lose all hope like most people did. I watched the trailers a couple more times and was like, okay, I'm warming up to it, because I thought to myself, Paul Feig does for the most part direct pretty good movies. I mean, he did Bridesmaids and I loved Spy. Look, I'm not going to say this movie is a complete train wreck and has 0 funny moments, because that's just not true. It definitely has a handful of funny moments that made me laugh and enjoy the overall experience. But as a whole, this movie makes a ton of jokes, and more often than not, they fall completely flat. I think the movie was let down by the script more than anything, because I really enjoyed the performances of 3 of the 4 female leads. To be completely honest, I'm not a Melissa McCarthy guy. I don't think I found her funny in any movie that I've seen her in, and Ghostbusters is no exception. But the other 3 actresses were solid overall, and each one definitely had their funny moments for sure. More often than not though, these characters will deliver a joke that is just awful and very PG. Now this is a PG-13 movie, but I'm starting to wonder if higher ups at Sony were like, you need to make this movie as family friendly as possible so we can maximize our profits, so that means no jokes that would be considered risky by any means. Cause this film's brand of humor is just incredibly bland and boring for the most part. Hopefully this doesn't upset any of you, but the funniest character in this movie is Chris Hemsworth's character Kevin, the Ghostbusters secretary of sorts. It's good to see him branch out a little bit from his usual roles in action movies, and he did a pretty good job overall in this film, although sometimes his jokes did fall flat for me too. But okay, so as far as this film's plot goes, it's super flimsy and pretty much makes 0 sense. The way that the 4 Ghostbusters even come together is super flimsy, and you never get an explanation as to why they're able to build all this equipment that literally no one else can build, besides, oh yeah, they build it because they're scientists. I mean, yeah, they're scientists, but I'd maybe like some more background info so their origin story would actually be believable and make sense. You never get that though. You just sort of have to go along with the ridiculousness of the whole thing and just accept that these Ghostbusters are exceptional because, well, they're the Ghostbusters. And look, I've seen the original film, and the way those 4 Ghostbusters come together and their ability to create advanced scientific technology isn't explained super well either, in my opinion. But the difference is that movie was made in 1984 and it's 2016 now, and we have very different standards for movies nowadays. Audiences now require a movie to provide explanations regarding their characters and their abilities and overall place in the story on a much deeper level than most 1980s films did. You have to show us why these characters can do the things they can do and how they're able to create this crazy technology like grenades that kill ghosts and ghost vacuums and such. such. I get it's a comedy and it's about supernatural beings invading Earth. It's not supposed to make sense really, but in order to immerse yourself in the story, the various pieces of the story's puzzle have to fit together to form a whole, and they just don't. Even the villain who's amplifying this paranormal activity and creating this doomsday scenario is not interesting in any way. He's not funny, he's not pure evil, he's not conflicted and layered, and since he's none of those things, he's not compelling. Okay, so as for the acting performances, I did think they were pretty solid all around. It's not like Melissa McCarthy is a bad actress, because she's definitely not. I just don't really find her all that funny. Her character throws in these little wisecracks into each conversation constantly, and I really didn't think any of it was all that funny. I thought the best of the 4 female leads was Kate McKinnon's character, Jillian, aka Holtzman. I thought her character was just sort of wacky and pretty funny and unique. Kate McKinnon is mostly known for her work on SNL, but I think after her work in Ghostbusters, she should definitely land more roles in feature films. Leslie Jones and Kristen Wiig were both pretty good in this one as well. I'm a big Kristen Wiig fan, so I like her in most things she does, but here she's not quite as good as she usually is, albeit still good. This could have been maybe the writing and just who her character is. She's mostly the serious Ghostbuster and doesn't get too many chances to show off her comedy chops. She acts the role really well though, albeit just moderately funny rather than her usual very funny self. Leslie Jones is mostly funny in the role of Patty though. She is definitely loud and at times too much, like many of you thought she would be from the trailer. She's also from SNL and she shows off some good comedic ability in this movie while also having some bad moments. All the characters do this though. They have some pretty funny moments and some moments where they make jokes that are just not funny at all. Okay, so as for the CGI in action, I thought it looked for the most part pretty good on screen. There's not really a lot of action in this movie, and that could be partly why I think it's just not a great movie. If your dialogue and story isn't great, you better have some good action a la Transformers to make up for what the other elements of the movie lacked. There's really only one action scene, and it's during the climax of the film. This scene was pretty cool visually, I have to admit, because the ghosts look cool and the Ghostbusters equipment looked nice. Story-wise, however, this climax was still decent at best because there was very little tension or suspense, and it was mostly just spectacle for the sake of spectacle because you need it for the climax of the movie. It's blowing up ghosts and stuff and cool to look at, but it had no weight to it because of the rest of the story built up none of it. So here's my time to be completely honest with you guys. I'm going to come at you with a completely honest take on this one because I really try to give you my honest opinion and not sugarcoat my reviews at all. So this film currently sits at a certified fresh rating of 73% among critics, but a 44% rating among audience members. Why the discrepancy, you ask? Here's my theory. My theory is that a lot of the critics don't want to give this movie a negative review because for one, you may come across as a sexist as a male critic if you say you don't like a movie or find it funny that has 4 female leads. And two, because a lot of us do want to see movies with more women in leading roles, and if the critics bash this movie like they probably should, less studios will want to actually make big blockbuster films with women in leading roles. Now I don't have any evidence for this because how could you, but that's just my feeling personally because I cannot understand how this movie is sitting at a 73%. It should definitely not be that high in my humble opinion. Maybe the certified critics are seeing something I'm not, because while this movie does have some redeemable qualities, it also has a lot of very poor qualities that will likely disappoint you. I think the critics want this movie to be groundbreaking and better than it actually is, especially considering the abundance of talent involved. Here's something else to consider. This is not something that most people want to discuss openly, but screw it. This channel is about discussing movies on a deeper level, and that's what I'm gonna do. Is it possible that some men will not see or like this movie because they prefer male comedians to women comedians? I personally do like women comedians like Amy Poehler and Kristen Wiig among others, but I think that a lot of men will not find this movie funny because they more than likely prefer male comedians to women comedians. I don't think that's sexist, it's just how it is. Like most men prefer the NBA to the WNBA, not because they're sexist, they just like the product better. In comedy, the brand of humor among men and women comedians is usually different and the delivery is different as well, and that definitely holds true for this movie too. I would be willing to bet that most women comedians' audiences are primarily women and most male comedians' audiences are primarily men. While I would assume women definitely make up a decent sized chunk of blockbuster ticket sales, I would also assume these films are mostly targeted at men because in my personal experience, men seem to have a much more deeply rooted interest in sci-fi and fantasy and action films than most women do. Like I bet there are a lot of women out there who love the Avengers, but primarily men are gonna go see this type of movie that's not that far off in genre from the Ghostbusters. But let's be real about this. This movie didn't let most of us down because it had 4 female leads. It let us down because it's mostly a bad movie. I'm pretty positive that if this movie was absolutely hilarious and had 4 female leads, no one would hate it whatsoever besides some internet trolls. I thought the 4 female leads did a really good job with what they were given, but I think the script really let them down both comedy-wise and just in regards to their progressions as characters. So overall, I thought this movie had some good acting and a good cast, a handful of really funny moments, and good CGI and a decent overall climax. Sadly, the film also had a really flimsy and poor story, a brand of humor that was boring and mostly unfunny, no build-up or legitimate explanation of the 4 Ghostbusters abilities and overall origin story, and zero suspense and tension that would have added to the emotion of the story. I'm gonna give this film a 5.5 out of 10 and say that you should more than likely pass on this one in theaters and wait for it to come out on Redbox in like 4 months. So did you guys see Ghostbusters yet? What did you think of it? And if not, let me know whether this is your kind of movie or not. And as always, if you like this video, click that like button and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for much more content like this. I know we've talked about a lot of tough topics to discuss today, but hopefully we can all discuss these together, so feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. That's all for now though. This is WillFoxification signing off. See you in the next review.